Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where Karens truly think it's all about them and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, they're at it again, guys. We've got Karens throwing tantrums in stores, messing with fast food workers, scamming restaurant owners. It's gonna be a wild one. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I've encountered entitled people before, but this one is just wow. So here's some background. I work at a buy, sell, trade toy store that has both new and used toys. We also have a build station where kids can build minifigures. The store is located in a mall. So a woman and her 5 kids came in on Sunday, and they were wanting to make their own minifigures and look around the store. My coworker and I were more than happy to help them, and they all went to go build their figures. We waited patiently, and then about 10 minutes before close time, we let them know that they had 10 minutes before we had to start closing procedures. And here's a side note. There is one day a week where this mall closes early, which means the store closes early as well. They all said that was great, and my coworker and I went ahead and started cleaning up other areas of the store. So after around 10 minutes, we let them know that we would have to start closing down the store, and we could start ringing them up if they wanted. The woman starts to get extremely huffy and then asked us why we're rushing them out of the store. I explained that our store again was closing, and we weren't allowed to be open longer than the mall was, and that all store employees were supposed to be out at most an hour after close. We told her that she could let her kids finish their figures, and we would give her another 10 minutes to do so. Well, when the 10 minutes were up, I went to let her know. We had another conversation about why she couldn't stay longer, which then turned into a 15-minute argument where I was trying to stay calm and she was getting more and more aggressive, saying we're kicking her out because we hate her kids. It's now like half an hour past closing. I told her that she could either check out now or we would have to close. At that, she gets extremely angry and she had all of her kids put back all their items into the minifigure making area. And they stormed out while she screamed, "Thanks for nothing. I hope you know that we'll never be back." We end up staying another 20 minutes to clean up after them and finishing procedures. The next day, my manager showed me the review she made, and here's what it said, paraphrased. She wrote, "I went in with my kids, unaware they closed early. They had a minifigure table, so I let my kids build some. They didn't let us finish or pay. Instead, they kicked us out and made us take apart our figures, and then yelled profanities at my children. The kids were super sad because we drove 2 hours out of town to make them. I'm extremely unhappy with the rude employees." My coworker and I explained what happened, and my manager watched the footage, and obviously, we did not get into trouble. Oh boy, there is nothing worse than customers staying way past closing to do what they want to do, right? Not caring about the employees who are trying to go home. I do hope the manager replied to that review, letting Karen know that they looked over the footage and that she's a liar and she's now banned from the store. But yeah, all a part of customer service industry. People will lie and leave bad reviews. Like I remember reading one post a long time ago where a Karen threw hot coffee at an employee and then wrote up a nasty review, completely forgetting the fact that she assaulted somebody. That said though, if you think that Karen holding up employees from going home was ridiculous, listen to this one, guys. Okay, strap in y'all, because this is my favorite story to share from my time in retail, because this lady was absolutely bonkers. This happened a few years ago when I was working part-time at a clothing outlet. Let's just say this company sells higher-end clothing and caters almost exclusively to rich people, and a lot of them happen to be Karens. My life was hell for those 2 years, and God bless those who work there full-time. You are the real heroes. So let me start by saying that this was a Saturday shift in a crowded shopping mall, and I was working double to cover a coworker. I had recently been promoted to shift lead, so I was the manager on duty that day, and I was closing. So fast forward to the end of the day. The day was insane, and by the end of it, both my coworker and I were absolutely exhausted. We were tidying up the store and taking care of all the go-backs when I hear the door open. It was 8:53 at that moment, and we close at 9 o'clock. Enter Karen and her kid. Typically, if we have customers that come in that late, it's to grab a gift card or something. We do have the occasional shopper that comes right before close and stays a while, but they're typically fairly quick when they realize that they're the ones holding us up. But not tonight. The first thing I notice is the kid is screaming. Like, it sounds like someone's ripping off his arms level screams. I just walk up to greet the mom over the sounds of her screaming offspring. I say, "Good evening, ma'am. Is there something I can help you find today?" The woman says, "No thanks, I'm just browsing," which, by the way, happens to be the worst answer. I respond, "Okay, well, let me know if you need help with anything before we close the dressing rooms, as we do close in about 10 minutes. This was my way of insinuating that it's late and I want to go home. The woman says, "Well, I'll definitely need a dressing room. Can you go ahead and start one for me?" Me, yelling at this point over the sounds of her kids screaming, say, "Sure thing." The woman says, "Sorry about him, he's had a long day." And I'm thinking, haven't we all? So as I'm walking away, I notice that the woman has a trash bag full of clothes underneath the stroller that's carting around her screaming toddler. I thought to myself, odd, but whatever, maybe she has a Goodwill donation. And this is where it gets worse. For the next hour and a half, this woman tries on every article of clothing in the store. Per corporate policy, we can't rush guests as they shop, as long as they come in before close. We tried everything, turning off the music, sweeping the floor, closing 2 out of the 3 registers, pretty much all the indicators that were closed, and to get the F out. And yet, the woman stayed, and her kid screamed for an hour of it before he fell asleep. At around 10:30, the woman's ready to check out. I have my coworker start to ring her up, so I can get closing started in the back and get us the heck out of there. I'm in the back stock room when I hear the screams. I rush out to find this lady screaming at my coworker, who's one of the nicest people I've ever known, and my coworker's crying at this point. So I say, "What seems to be the problem? Anything I can help with?" The woman says, "Yes, you can fire this idiot because she's treating me like absolute garbage." I don't think corporate will be happy to hear how their employees are treating paying customers. At this point, my coworker looks at me with tear-filled eyes. So I say, "Hey, just go to the back and finish the online orders for me. I'll take care of her." I look at Karen and I say, "Okay, ma'am, what can I help you with?" The woman screams at me and says, "Well, I was trying to get these clothes returned so I can put the credit towards my purchase." I then watch as she takes the full garbage bag of clothes and she dumps it out in front of me. Technically, the clothes inside the bag were all from the store where I worked. However, they were all a year older or more, clearly well worn, no tags. So I tell Karen, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you can't return these." And she responds with, "What? Why not?" I tell her, for one, they don't have any tags and you don't have a receipt, and they've clearly been washed and worn by you for quite some time. Returns are typically recent purchases that don't quite fit. And this is when she loses it. She screams at me and says, "Well, these don't fit me anymore, so I would like to return them." Are you denying my return? The woman said this in a very condescending tone. And I say, "Our policy is 30 days, and it can't be washed, and you need a tag or receipt." She then says, "Can't you just give me store credit?" To which I tell her, "No, I cannot. You can try resale shops if you want to, but we're not a thrift store, and these pieces aren't even in production anymore." Karen says, "I'm not an idiot. I know these clothes are from a while ago because I'm the one who bought them. They don't fit me anymore because I was busy creating human life, and now I need new clothes." And yes, the woman actually said that to me. She then gestures to her poor exhausted child, who at this point had woken up and began to scream again. I say to her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't accept these as returns. Can I help you purchase the clothes you picked out today?" She says, "Like hell you can't. I've had a long day and I deserve this. And I can't afford to buy these without returning my old clothes." I just tell her, "Then I don't know what I can do for you." She then says, "You can get me your manager." At this point, full of satisfaction, I tell her I'm the manager on the floor tonight. She then says to me, "Well, then you are so screwed. I am calling corporate to report you and your coworker." I just tell her, "Here's their number. The call center opens tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Hearing me say that, Karen's mouth dropped. I'm pretty sure she didn't expect me to be okay with getting reported, but I didn't give a single F at this point. The woman was quiet for a moment, and then she takes a deep breath and asked if I could help her bag up her old clothes to take with her, so she could give her screaming child a snack. I was pretty shocked at the abrupt mood change, but whatever. I'm exhausted and I want to leave so bad at this point. I start bagging up her old clothes, which she reached down to grab her kid's snack. As I'm putting the clothes in the bag, the woman reaches over the counter, grabs the clothes she was gonna purchase, and then makes a run towards the door. I just stand there because it's against store policy to stop people from shoplifting anyways, and I've locked the doors to prevent other people from coming in. The woman gets to the doors and she violently yanks the handle back and forth, trying to open them. This is when I calmly walk over and Karen screams and says, "Let me out. I'm calling the police if you don't. You're trapping me in here." I just tell her, "Sure thing." I then hold my hands out for the clothes. The woman glares at me and then wisely decides it's not worth it. She shoves the clothes at me and then turns away, muttering obscenities as she does so. I unlock the door and she leaves. As if that encounter wasn't crazy enough, the woman actually called corporate the next morning to complain after literally trying to shoplift from our store. You know what? The things people do will never cease to amaze me, and I bet that was Karen's plan all along. Come in right before closing when the store's dead, try on some clothes, try to make the absurd return, and then making a getaway when the employees are busy putting back her clothes inside the bag. It's either that or she actually thought she could make the return, which are well over a year old. I don't know, it could be either or. She could be a really crafty shoplifter, or she actually thought she could swap out clothes because she made a baby and her clothes didn't fit anymore. Who frickin' knows? The next Karen, though, is actually a scammer, guys. So back in high school, I was working in a small Asian fusion restaurant. I loved this job, and I had the most amazing coworkers ever. Of course, we did have some rude customers come in, but they were usually few and far between. But this woman was the craziest, most entitled customer that I've ever encountered in my 4 years of food service. One night, I was working with a relatively new coworker and my manager, who are both really nice guys. This evening happened to be a particularly slow evening, aside from small dinner rush. During the dinner rush, the phone rang to place a to-go order. I picked up the phone and gave my usual cheerful greeting. A very nice sounding woman named Sandy, and I'll never forget her name, politely ordered a fried rice, which is pretty typical. However, things got strange after that. The woman asked for pineapples in the rice because pineapple's moist, and she likes having moist pineapple because our rice is always dry. Not thinking too much of it at the time, I added pineapple to her order, and I told her the time to come pick it up. The kitchen makes the order, I fixed it up, and it would be ready to go by the time she got there. The woman arrived to pick up the order. She was super sweet to me, and the transaction went off without a hitch. My manager was standing at the counter, and after I rang her up, she asked to talk to the manager. She told us, "You know, this is my favorite restaurant, but the last time I was here, I ordered some edamame, and there were 2 young girls closing that night, and they looked really busy. They must have forgotten it. By the time I got home and I realized the order was wrong, it was too late, and you guys were closed, and I didn't want to be a bother. Is there any way I could get some edamame this time to fix the mistake?" Now, I thought all of this was a kind of consideration that we rarely saw from customers when the order was incorrect or missing something. Usually, people were honest right away and not aware of the amount of work we had to do to close the place. My manager told her to call as soon as possible if her order wasn't to her specifications so we could fix it, and then very nicely gave her a free order of edamame. Now, fast forward a month or so. I was working the same shift, and it was just myself and a shift lead. Again, the night was going slow, and around the time the dinner crowd came in, the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and it was Sandy again. She ordered fried rice, and then continued to tell me about the moist pineapples. Being my usual friendly self, I let her finish her spiel about her wet fruits, and then rang in the order. Soon afterwards, she came in to pick it up. This time, the shift lead rang her up and gave her the order. As soon as the payment went through, Sandy asked the shift lead if she was the manager. The shift lead said that she was in charge that night and she could answer her questions. And this is when Sandy said, "You know, this is my favorite restaurant, but the last time I was in here, I ordered some edamame and there were 2 young girls closing that night and they looked really busy and they must have forgotten it. By the time I got home and I realized the order was wrong, it was too late and you were closed. I don't want to be a bother, but is there any way I could get some edamame this time to fix the mistake?" It's almost like she had this crap rehearsed to win a damn Oscar or something. At this point, my head perked up because there's nothing I hate more than customers lying to get what they want, making it seem like I'm stupid in the process. Right before my shift lead rang up the edamame for free to give to Sandy, I interrupt and I say, "Ma'am, I don't mean to be rude, but the last time you were in here, you told us the exact same story, and my manager gave you some edamame as compensation." And hearing that, Sandy instantly lost it on me. It was like I denied her oxygen or something. The woman started screaming at me saying how dare I'm accusing her of stealing food, and demanded I be fired immediately. She said I had no right to speak to anyone that way, let alone a customer, and that I clearly wasn't fit to be working anywhere with the attitude I had. She then looked up at me and said, "Wait, I remember you. You were here that night I came in when that man was working, and you forgot my edamame. It's employees like you who ruin good establishments like this. I remember because I watched you forget it." At this point, my manager asked me to leave the counter and gave this vile woman some more free edamame. I was also told that the owner would be hearing about my behavior, and it was likely that I would receive some kind of disciplinary action. Of course, the next day, this was all reported to the owner. I also realized it would be foolish to assume I would never see Sandy again. Naturally, the very next day, in the middle of a lunch rush, guess who comes in? You got it. Effing Sandy. Not wanting to deal with this woman again, I scurry to the back. She walks up to the counter with a bag of food and she slams it down on the counter, telling the manager that she was in here last night and this one bitchy girl was horribly rude to her and accused her of stealing. My manager looked in the bag, and Sandy had brought in this bag of nasty dried up rice and wilted edamame beans. She then starts screaming saying, "This is my favorite restaurant. How dare you treat me like this? Do you not want my business?" After that, she told us we got her order wrong and she couldn't eat any of it because she had Crohn's disease. Likely another lie to get free grub. My manager apologized and then gave her an entire free meal with her precious edamame. She decided to eat the food in-house and went to get her table. By then, the owner had heard this commotion and he comes out of his office. We saw her across the dining room and he asked me if that was the lady from last night. I said yes, getting ready to have an awkward talk with Sandy, where I would have to profusely apologize for calling her out. Instead, the owner walks over to her table and looks Sandy dead in the face and said, "I've been giving you free edamame for years, and you do not get to treat my staff like that when they call you out on your BS. Now get out of my restaurant. I never want to see you in here again." At that, Sandy gets up and she huffs out of the restaurant almost in tears. My boss came back and said, "Man, I am glad I never have to see that woman again. Thank you for finally calling her out." And my 16-year-old self was absolutely shocked at the turn of events. When Sandy's free fried rice with moist pineapple and a side of edamame came out of the kitchen, there was no Sandy to claim it. In my own way of executing some cosmic justice for myself, and knowing she'd never get to eat at her favorite restaurant ever again, I took the free food, and I sucked down every last piece of moist pineapple and every one of Sandy's precious edamame. It was delicious, and we never saw Sandy again. Sandy, you soybean-sucking harlot, in the off chance you're reading this, I hope you have a nice heaping bowl of edamame and that you choke on the first bean. What a story that was, guys, and honestly, I used to work in fast food, and let me tell you, I hate scammers like Sandy. Like the amount of times that people would finish their whole sandwich or something and then come back and complain, "Oh, you forgot blah blah blah, make me a new one," was absolutely absurd. Like, I can tell you firsthand, some people suck. And I really do wonder why the owner entertained this woman for so long. Like, he said, for years. Like, the owner knew she kept pulling this Oscar-winning performance out of her butt every once in a while and still told the managers to comp her. Like, what in the world? I sure hope her one serving of pineapple fried rice wasn't keeping the place open. And this person comments saying, "We used to have this one guy come in and he would order hot chocolate with double whipped cream. The guy would lap all the whipped cream off and then complain we didn't give him any whipped cream. Every effing Friday, like we wouldn't remember him." And this person shares their experience and they say, "You know the scam. Whine about perfectly good food to get some sort of compensation." So in their old age, my parents befriended another older couple who would pull this stunt everywhere they went. After my mom told me a few stories of how their new friends had shown them how to get discounted or free meals, I felt like I was suddenly the very responsible adult, concerned about the bad influence these people were on my parents. So while visiting my parents with my girlfriend, this other couple attended dinner with us. As I expected, the food was brought to the table, and they immediately began complaining to one another about the quality, taste, temperature, etc. They were making a scene in order to attract the attention of the waitress. When our waitress returned to ask how we were doing, the miserable old bastard who played the lead role in their act took a deep breath, struck a dramatic pose, and began to say something. That's when I leaned forward and I cut him off before he could finish the first word. I say, "Everything's absolutely fantastic. It's all great. Thank you very much." The waitress just smiled and she began her, "Great, well, if you need any," and this is when the guy made a second attempt. He said, "We come here all the time," and this is when I cut him off again. I didn't acknowledge that he was speaking at all. I just repeated, "Everything was great," and thanked her again. The guy was stunned and thrown off from his routine by my interruption. During this pause, the waitress walked away, as it seemed clear that she knew what they were trying to accomplish. The guy turned bright red. That's when I turned to my girlfriend and, smiling without lowering my voice, stated how pitiful it is that some people could be so dishonest, deceitful, and put at risk the livelihood of a cook, server, or hostess for a pathetic discount or a free meal. My passive-aggressive reverse parenting broke my parents out of that habit. And what a hero OP was, and that's the thing. People are so self-entitled and quick to lie to get discounts that they often don't care what happens on the other end. And you hear this argument all the time. Well, McDonald's makes millions a year. They can afford to give us free food. Like, yeah, Karen, but what about screaming at the employees and messing up their day and potentially costing them their job? Did you ever think of that? Of course not. So way back in my struggling to get through the college days of yore, I worked part-time at a Burger King near my apartment for some extra cash. This Burger King was in a sketchy part of town, and neither the facilities, nor employees, nor the clientele was exactly upper crust. Now, this isn't gonna be the story of spitting in someone's soda or putting their bun down my pants. I would never do something unhealthy or gross to someone's food. Nobody deserves that. Plus, where's the art? Where's the finesse? With that said, all of my coworkers were lazy people with crappy attitudes. The exception, other than me, was this mousy high school girl who worked the drive-thru on weekends. She was one of those wide-eyed, meek girls who looked barely old enough to work. And honestly, she should have been at a kiosk at a mall or something, but for whatever reason, she worked at this Burger King. All the drive-thrus have their share of crap to deal with, but the drive-thru at this Burger King was particularly nasty. It was a never-ending parade of vicious and strangely demanding customer orders. For example, individual cars would often want to order separately for all 6 people in the car during the busy times. If you told them no, you would get cussed out by the entire car. And if they stuck around to get their order, you could almost guarantee that one of the drinks would end up blasting into the drive-thru window as they sped away cussing. People would bang on windows, yell, throw stuff, and if it wasn't stuff like that, it was people being really mean and threatening. Like I said, sketchy part of town. Also, for some reason, a lot of people who came to this Burger King had especially picky and specific orders. A very common thing to order was the original chicken sandwich, the one that's long, not circular shaped. They would load it up with extra toppings and then ask for it to be cut in half, turning it into a mini submarine sandwich. I don't know why this was such a thing at Burger King, but it was very common. The order usually went something like this. The person would say, "I want the original chicken sandwich with extra lettuce, extra mayo, extra pickles, extra tomato, and extra ketchup." And when I say extra ketchup, I mean extra ketchup. Because y'all never put enough ketchup on anything, and make sure it's hot. Y'all never heat up the sandwich enough. And I want that sandwich cut in half. Do you hear me? Last time, y'all didn't cut it in half. How am I supposed to eat a sandwich that big if y'all don't cut it in half? Don't make me come in there. You'd better get it right. Now, typically, this did not bother me, as I only worked in the kitchen making the orders, and I was focused on getting through the shift. But on the days when the nice girl worked, it made my blood boil, listening to all the crap she had to endure through her entire shift. If people asked for crazy stuff nicely, I didn't care. But when the a-hole Karens would bark and be mean to her, I would look for especially petty ways to mess with their order. If somebody was yelling about their food not being hot enough, it got microwaved for 2 minutes instead of 15 seconds. Anything with cheese came out like lava. If you berated her for 5 minutes, making sure there was extra ketchup, you would enjoy your ketchup sandwich, wrapped in 4 wrappers to keep it from leaking everywhere. But my masterpiece was when the load up the original chicken sandwich and cut it in half Karens started acting like a-holes. I would load up that sandwich just like they demanded, with every damn topping they screamed for. Lettuce piled to the sky, gobs of ketchup and mayo oozing through the mountain of tomatoes and pickles. It would be between 2 stalest buns I could find, and then nuked for 2 minutes in the microwave. And if they screamed, "Don't forget to cut it in half," how am I supposed to eat a sandwich if y'all don't cut it in half? I never forget. I always remembered to cut it in half, the long way. And that's how you deal with Karens, guys. Absolutely brilliant play by OP. Imagine getting your sandwich and having it cut in half the long way. I don't know if I would laugh or cry at that point. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /Entitled People. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/Entitled People episode, another one, where psycho Karens are calling the cops and they're getting arrested. Guys, it's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.